Mr. Pro-Vice-Chancellor, may I present Robert Harris, a candidate for an honorary degree. Robert Harris studied English at Cambridge, where he was president of the famous Union Debating Society, edited the student newspaper, and went on to work as a reporter and political columnist for the BBC, the Sunday Times, the Observer, and the Daily Telegraph, before becoming one of the most successful novelists of the last 30 years. With this information, you may be tempted to assume that Robert came from a prosperous background, probably in southern England, and had a public school education. Nothing could be further from the truth. When he was born, Robert's parents lived in a council house in Nottingham. His father had left school at 14 and worked for a local printing firm, where he met Robert's mother. It was not a wealthy household, but Robert describes his childhood as extremely happy and culturally rich. His reading extended from the Just William stories through Sherlock Holmes to Great Expectations, the proper book he would now recommend to young readers. Home was also a place where all the family regularly engaged in political conversation. When he was 6, Robert wrote a story for school called "Why Me and My Dad Don't Like Sir Alec Douglas Hume," the then Conservative Prime Minister. Fortunately, the family moved across the county boundary into Leicestershire, and Robert went to school in the village of Bottisford, and then to King Edward VII Comprehensive School in Melton Mowbray. That school produced other illustrious old boys, such as Graham Chapman of Monty Python fame, but it was certainly not an Oxbridge production line. Robert says that he did not feel unduly pushed academically at home, and that he and his parents were all rather surprised when he got a place at Cambridge. This surely understates both the support at home and a great deal of commitment and natural ability on his part. He found university liberating, entering into its opportunities with enthusiasm, unburdened by the weight of expectation he detected in some of his contemporaries. He had been eager to write from his youngest days and wasted no time joining Varsity, Cambridge's oldest student newspaper. This experience, combined with his fascination for politics, made the subsequent move to journalism a natural one. After graduation, Robert joined the BBC and worked on news and current affairs programs such as Panorama and Newsnight. And it was on that program that he met his wife Jill, with whom he has 4 children, and who is a novelist in her own right. His first book was a work of non-fiction. A Higher Form of Killing was a study of chemical and biological warfare, written with his BBC colleague Jeremy Paxman and published in 1982. Other non-fiction books, on the Falklands War, the Hitler Diaries, and Neil Kinnock, followed. In 1987, he became political editor of The Observer. Robert was only 30 and had already established himself as a respected figure on the British political scene. He has never, unlike some political reporters one could name, aspired to being a politician. But there was something not satisfied by regular political commentary and the occasional work of non-fiction. He won a contract to write a biography of John le Carré, but le Carré said the book could not be published until his death. Thwarted, in 1992, Robert started to write a novel, a piece of alternative history, exploring what would have happened if the Nazis had won the war. Not as a dry, hypothetical analysis of life in Britain under Nazi rule, but as experienced by a police detective investigating mysterious deaths, which takes him dangerously close to the heart of Nazi power. This novel was Fatherland. Robert has said that, having written the opening line, he knew he had finally found what he wanted to do. It was an overwhelming experience. And it had an overwhelming impact. Even before it was complete, the book became the subject of a bidding war by publishers. And its successful publication, sales now exceed 3 million, earned him enough to become a full-time writer and to move to what he is happy to call the house that Hitler bought. Since then, there have been 13 further novels, many of them also bestsellers, with another due for publication this September. They are set at various times and places. He takes us to Pompeii just before the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. We are involved in the Dreyfus scandal that rocked late 19th century France. We are transported to Munich at the time of the negotiations between Hitler and Chamberlain, and are inside observers at the election of a pope. In his powerful Cicero trilogy, possibly his finest work, we follow the career of ancient Rome's great orator through the eyes of his loyal secretary, as the Republic fails and the Empire begins. In The Second Sleep, published with great prescience in 2019, Robert envisages what the world might be like in 800 years after a cataclysmic event, such as an unforeseen and uncontrollable virus. Not surprisingly, several of his books have been adapted for the screen. Despite his chronological and imaginative range, Robert has a consistent focus on the rise, fall, and corrupting effect of power. As he has said, "I think it's the function of a novelist to pick up the vibrations in society and to turn them into a story, the application of the imagination to political concerns." 3 things set his books apart from others that might loosely be classified as political fiction: the power of his imagination, the clarity and vigor of the narrative, and the quality of his research, which makes the fiction entirely convincing. In 1996, Robert was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, and he's an honorary Fellow of his old Cambridge College. It is sometimes suggested that books that can't be put down and which sell exceptionally well cannot also be great literature or prompt serious thought. Robert Harris has disproved that theory many times over. This university awarded its first ever Doctor of Letters degree in 1958 to no less an author than E.M. Forster. He has since been followed by Iris Murdoch, Vikram Seth, and many others. Today, we welcome Robert Harris as a worthy addition to their illustrious company. Mr. Pro-Vice-Chancellor, on the recommendation of the Senate and the Council, I present Robert Dennis Harris, that you may confer on him the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters.
Thank you, Nigel, for that Ciceronian oration, and thank you to the University of Leicester for this degree, and thank you for giving me the loan of this outfit. I like it so much I don't think I'll give it back. I looked at myself in the mirror and I tried to think who I reminded myself of, and I think it's the hat, it's Liz Truss. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take it off. It's a great honor to be with you on this joyous day for 2 reasons. First, because I know from experience how hard the last couple of years have been for students. My youngest son and daughter both had their university experience interrupted by the pandemic. Bad enough not to be with your friends, worse still to be stuck with your parents. This is a true test of character and endurance on both sides. The second reason it's such an honor is because you're from the School of Arts, studying literature and creative writing. and also from media, communication, and sociology. So much more interesting, let's face it, than law or business or science. And these areas have been the focus of my career all my working life. Studying these subjects has always been under attack. It was true when I was reading English in the 1970s. It's even more true today. And some universities, very regrettably, are actually closing now their courses in English literature. I was the first in my family to go to university. My father, as Nigel told you, was a printer. He was a clever man. He read James Joyce, Graham Greene, and Arnold Bennett. He read a lot of history as well. But he left school at 14. Nowadays, he would have had a chance to go to university. And the opening up of universities to such a large number of young people has been one of the great achievements that I've seen in my lifetime. Because he should have had that opportunity, as should my mother, but they never had it. I was lucky. My university education was paid for by the state. It's harder these days to make that commitment, I know, to the arts and to any subject that doesn't lead automatically to a profession. It's an act of faith. But as Alexander Pope said, the proper study of mankind is man, or to correct his unfortunate 18th century sexism, the most important thing for human beings to study is humanity itself. And where else do we reveal ourselves more completely than in the products of our imaginations and in the way we communicate with one another and the way we organize society and the way we treat one another? 30 years ago, I was writing my second novel, Enigma, about the codebreakers of Bletchley Park, whose work solving the Nazi codes may have made the difference between winning and losing the war. Of course, there were many mathematicians at Bletchley, most famously, of course, Alan Turing. But I was amazed by how few scientists there were. There were historians, there were novelists, there were an enormous number of classicists, there were papyrologists and musicologists, but I never came across anyone who worked there when I was researching Bletchley with a vocational degree. No lawyers, no MBEs, no accountants. The war was won in large part by people with arts degrees who had studied subjects which on the face of it seemed to have no practical relevance whatsoever. It was simply about scholarship and intelligence, about disciplining a mind and keeping it open at the same time, a liberal arts education that actually outwitted the efficiency of the Nazis. So congratulations, guys. The future depends on you. Long live the School of Arts. Long live the study of media, communication, and sociology. And long live the University of Leicester.